Hello and welcome once again. The Buddha made a very good suggestion and requirement of the Sangha, of monks and nuns, bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, to remain in one place for 3 months of the year, and that is the monsoon season in India. And a very good suggestion that is too. But although the monsoon season in India, when it can rain quite heavily in parts, is now over, we have had Pavarana Day, the final ceremony of asking for forgiveness, and then we are able to go on our wandering about again as monks and nuns, as I am doing, having arrived here in Sri Lanka. However, here it is still monsoon season by all accounts, because from when I arrived late on Monday evening, I got my days mixed up in the last video. I have no idea how long I've been here, but all of the people I've met along the way, walking, asked the same question: where are you going? Where have you come from? How many days? And I've now learnt from this questioning that I came from India Monday evening. It is now, I think, Wednesday, and that's how many days I've been here. How many days am I staying? I do not know. Where am I going? I do not know. I just say I'm not sure. It's hard for people to accept, understand. You have no holiday plans. You're a foreigner in a different country, but they're very, very understanding of monastic life here, being a Buddhist country. So I say, I'm a monk, I'm just here because it's a beautiful country full of Buddhist people, and I will stay as long as I can. But the rain continues. From when I arrived on Monday, heavy rain, I think it began at about 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening, went through to about 10 or 11. I was rescued by a very kind tuk-tuk driver, whom has now become my upasaka, helper, assistant, kapia. These are the different names for a Buddhist lay person, whom layman, upasika is lay woman, whom can help you with everyday needs and requirements. He is a very kind, very nice man, and he's been helping me by finding this place for me to stay whilst it's still raining. Because wisely the Buddha made this rule, this requirement, so that we stay in one place for our own safety and protection. The rain is very heavy during these monsoon seasons, and just wandering here and there, as I've been doing, between places, you only have to be caught for a couple of minutes to get extremely wet, and this is why I'm not wearing my robes. I'm trying to dry them on my piece of coconut string under the fan without them going too mouldy and smelly, so I have to wash them again, or it again, because it's just the one outer robe, upper robe. So I'm just wearing this little monk vest thing at the moment. So the rain continues. So I've, what do we call this upasaka? My kapia upasaka, he's found me another little place I can stay for shelter from tomorrow for a little bit longer, more in the jungle and out of the main thoroughfare of things. Although this is very peaceful and quiet. Well, by comparison to some places I've stayed in the past and recently. I thought I'd take this opportunity, whilst I'm confined to quarters, if you can call it that, to just go through some of the comments and questions again. Carrying on, I should perhaps start at the other end if I'm carrying on, because they are building up a little bit. But please excuse me if you've sent a long question in, well, not a long question, If there's a great big long statement before the question, I'm going to skip it for now, but I will get round to answering all of your questions. I do, if I'm alive and I'm still able to do this, I can promise you that I will answer all of your questions in due course. But just for now, because I'm still quite tired after travelling, if there's 15 pages of writing before the question, I'm going to skip it. I don't mean that, but a preamble, and just go to the simple questions well, not simple questions, but the ones I can make out. I notice on some monks' videos they have someone reading the questions, which is a very good idea. I'll put these glasses on, that might help. No, it doesn't really very well. No, it doesn't. Oh, that does. Yes, I want ones that I can read the actual question. Right, this is a nice, precise question. What about leaving children behind? Do you have advice? Is it ever okay? Well, we take the advice, not my advice, we take the advice of our teacher, the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama. He was married, and he was married to his princess, if he was a prince, if you believe the stories. But however, it is well documented, he was married, and he had just born a son, Rahula. Eventually, he became one of his leading disciples in the Sangha. But that was a long time, because you cannot ordain until you're 20 years of age. I think maybe he did, being the Buddha's son, ordain sooner than that. I can't quite remember how the story goes. However, he did have a son. This is the point. Now, if you have any responsibilities, let's start firstly. You cannot become, for instance, a monk. You cannot receive a higher ordination or become a samanera, the first stage of ordination, if you have debts. You have to clear your debts, which is largely saying you must take care of your responsibilities and be able to, in renouncing your worldly life, you're not running away from your responsibilities. You're letting go of it. You're saying, okay, I've finished with this. I have no more debts. I have no more work to do. My children are supported, looked after by their mother, and their grandparents, or they've grown up. They are not in need of my direct support. Then that is fine to do so. The Buddha did creep off in the middle of the night in order to go off and wander and seek enlightenment. However, he was leaving his son with his mother, who did actually die, and then the son had to be looked after by her sister, his auntie, so the auntie, ultimately. But as the story goes, he was leaving the child in okay circumstances. So in answer to your question, it's up to you, but it wouldn't be okay if you were still responsible for looking after your children, of course. They need to really be grown up or being looked after already adequately. You see, many people get divorced these days. We have come from split parentage, so very often then you might only see your children at weekends or something like this, and it might not make so much difference. But if you were literally working to feed your children, then no, it wouldn't be okay, because it wouldn't be morally a correct way. It wouldn't be responsible. You still have responsibilities. This is what I'm trying to say. I hope that makes sense. I mean, my children are in their 30s, but different cultures, different countries have different family relationships and bonds, and different attitudes towards responsibility. But from where I come from, children often leave their parents at 16, 17 to go to college, or 18 to go to university, and then never return home. It's not that they live in their family home until they're in their 20s or until they get married or something like that. So parents are used to their children or being parted from their children at some point. And the most important thing to remember is we will all be parted from our children, either through our own aging, sickness and death, or the early death of our children. It can happen. Unfortunate, but it's not a necessary rule of nature that parents die before the children. And there are many suttas dealing with this very subject in its own right, which is another subject for talk and discussion. But we will come to that another time, as that's not the question. Just tonight, I've really found some nice short questions. Avoid onions, sir. We only eat as monks what I'm given. So I've been here, it's a Buddhist country, I go out with this bindabat, this alms bowl, I get what's put into it. They tend to give it to you all plated up nicely here, and I don't think it's polite to tip it into my bowl, so I just eat what I'm given. They are asking the question, fish or something like this. They've only said fish so far. I'm not sure about other kinds of meats. And I don't say no, I say vegetables. And they say, oh, yeah. So they then understand I'm vegetarian. That's okay. But we aren't to be fussy. We are alms mendicants. We're begging for our food. Whatever's given, we gratefully receive. And we can leave it in our bowl, push it aside, and maybe in that way avoid onion. But why? I ask myself. I'm a Buddhist monk. There's nothing in the rules, in the Vinaya, to say we cannot eat onions or garlic. There are in some Buddhist traditions, the northern traditions, Mahayana traditions, or even Tibetan traditions possibly, and certainly in Hinduism, there are ideas about the nature of these kinds of vegetables, if that's what they are. But not in Buddhism. So I like onion. I don't avoid onion. I had very nice raw onion in the salad food I had this morning, and also cooked onion in some very beautifully seasoned potatoes, and I'm really enjoying the wonderful alms food that I'm begging for here. It doesn't feel like I'm begging for food at all. Also, the rice and dal is very, very delicious, what I'm getting. So I wouldn't have any reason to recommend anybody is going to get particularly fussy over what they're eating. It is just fuel. We put fuel into our vehicles. Now, okay, there are some people who are swayed to buy a more expensive fuel because it does this or it does that to the engine. But generally speaking, we put fuel, well, in the olden days, maybe all cars are electric now, but in my time, we put fuel into the car. We didn't care what make it was, what flavour it was, whether it was 4-star, 3-star or 2-star, I think mattered in my day. But anyway, it's fuel to make the car go along. To me, food is the same. If I can enjoy it, that's a bonus. And I do prefer not to eat meat, or even these days, dairy products or eggs. So you could say I'm vegan. But onions, garlic, leeks, which are in some traditions forbidden, no problem as far as I am concerned, and certainly as far as the Buddha in the Pali Canon, in the Theravada school of this tradition of Buddhism, it's fine. Long question. Can I find something short in there? Oh no, very long. Fear is probably the biggest negative emotion. Can we do the same method to stop it, Venerable? I think you were referring to my talk about anxiety. I can't remember what method I was referring to, but I only have one method to deal with anxiety, and I would say yes, you can probably use the same method for fear. The method being, when any emotion arises, it has its connected physical feeling. So we have the emotional feeling of the mind of anxiety, or let's say fear. Fear is often the basis for anxiety. Ultimately, what is fear? Let's ask ourselves this question. It's fear usually in a direct form of ourselves being harmed. We can expand upon that. We have fear in terms of like hiri and ottappa, the fear of breaking sila, because though ultimately we fear the consequences as well as the moral aspect of breaking a precept specifically, we more and more rightly fear perhaps what the consequences are for those around us and ourselves as a result of karma. The results of karma being vipaka, so all karma is actions of body, speech and mind. So there is a little fear in that scope, hiri and ottappa. The fear of breaking the precepts, and ottappa, the fear of the consequences. But that fear isn't the direct fear you're referring to, the fear of being hurt, maybe the fear of something you imagine or believe in, like ghosts or spirits or evil forces. These you could, if you think logically, say, have I ever really seen a ghost, a spirit, an evil force, experience this? Is it something in my imagination? If you're coming from a theistic background where you believe in God, you believe in heaven, you believe in hell, likelihood is you're going to believe in ghosts and such like also. If you come from a tradition of Buddhism where there is no belief, no prayer, no worship, just an understanding of the logical teachings of the Buddha, as this is, and the results of karma, then there is less to be believed in a mystical fashion, like spirits, ghosts or evil forces, and a lot less fear in the world. But we do have fear of, for instance, you may have nowhere to stay overnight and have to stay outside, and I've been fortunate since I've been here, but there are some very strange creatures I've not even seen. I saw a new creature today. I don't know the name of it, I was told, but I've forgotten, which apparently is quite poisonous. It's like an iguana. They're quite very big, like the geckos in my videos from Thailand, but they're huge. What were they called, those geckos? That sounds like tuk-tuk in Thailand, but I call them geckos anyway. But they were this big, or this big. But these ones, I saw one in the park. I was going to sit down and do this questions and answer session, but it was about to rain, so I thought no. And also this thing came along that's about 2 meters long, very thin. It looked like a crocodile, but more friendly. It didn't have the teeth, but it had a big long tongue that comes out like this. Now, you know, you could have fear of such a creature coming up to you in the night. Personally, these things don't bother me so much. As long as you are developing metta, most creatures will leave you unharmed because they sense that you will do them no harm. And often harm caused is out of fear, as a result of fear for their own safety. So people will attack in defense. So how to deal with fear as an emotion? Well, firstly, understand what it is. You're fearing ultimately the end, death, or more so perhaps the process of dying, pain. When you understand what pain is, when you understand and you can fully relate it to its impermanent nature, even if it results in death, it's still by that very fact impermanent, which we call anicca, the first of the characteristics of existence. And that also is the basis of a lot of suffering. But pain can be a cause for suffering, which we call dukkha, the second of these characteristics of existence, the essence of life. But anatta, that all things are out of our control, not self or non-self as it's correctly translated, is really best understood as our inability to control any events. So whilst we may see death imminent and fear it, that is because we are experiencing a situation. Yet if we weren't to see that experience imminently as fearful and be walking along nonchalantly, not knowing what's going to happen in the next 3 seconds, and a big lorry comes along and squashes us and we're dead, we would have had no fear. It would have taken us by surprise. But the end result is the same. Or our heart could stop, or our brain could stop, our bodies could stop. We have no control over anything. We can only be in this present moment of this breath in and this breath out. So with all emotional feelings, firstly understand the cause. The cause of fear is anxiety of pain or death. The cause of, is fear of pain or death. The cause of anxiety is the fear of the unknown. and what's going to not knowing what will happen next. When we understand that we never know this, it's always anatta, it's always out of our control, it's less of a cause for anxiety, it's less of a cause for fear. The method is to just bring the attention, the awareness, firstly to the breath, by breathing in, and then notice where the feeling is in the body. And you will find that the feeling of fear, the feeling of anxiety is in the same place. I've given a very long talk about this in a video all alone, on its own, which I may well have recommended to this subscriber whom is now referring to this by this question. But yes, notice this feeling in the body, the corresponding physical feeling to the mental emotion, because it's the mental emotion that always has a related physical feeling, and a physical feeling, like pain, will always have a related mental emotion. So one doesn't go without the other. So if you're experiencing a mental emotion, anxiety or fear, find in the body how it's feeling. Bring your awareness, your attention to that, and notice that's only impermanent in itself. In fact, as soon as you bring your attention to it and you breathe in, it will dissipate, it will dissolve, it will go away. And you'll see then a release from anxiety, or also a release of fear. So to cut a very long story, like I've just said, shorter, the answer to your question is yes. And that's me saying that people's questions are too long. So are my answers, aren't they? Fear is probably the biggest. That's the same. Yeah, I'm not sure I understand that. Okay, this is in a different language. I don't know what the language is, but I did translate it before. Well, I didn't. Google translated it. It just says Tardu. Thardu. And I think that says, do you think? If it doesn't, that's another question. But it'll do. It's a good question. Do I think? Personally, do I think? Oh, yes. Now, I know Buddhists practice the practice of meditation is to clear the mind. Often it's thought of that. But it's more to know the mind, know that we're thinking, and know what we're thinking about. Not to try and control that, but by the very process of knowing, understanding what you're thinking and why you're thinking that, is mindfulness. It's sati. It's understanding the thinking process. This does, by that knowing, slow down not slow down the thinking process, but bring into a more tame environment the thinking process, so that thoughts don't jump from one subject to another, or one desire, requirement to another. It trains the thinking in a certain way by just knowing what you're thinking. So yes, I do think. I think when one develops deep stages of samadhi, of absorption, you can find a place where there is very little in the way of thought. But throughout your daily activities, one needs to think. When thinking becomes what they call in the Pali language papancha, where you're ruminating, overthinking on one subject, repetitively, this is the time to intervene, not to control, but to understand. Again, like with the fear or anxiety, identify the cause of that thought. Is there anything you can do about it here and now? If not, you can put it on the back burner, save it for later, say, I'll let go of this, not in this cliche speaking kind of way, but I literally will put that heavy weight of keep thinking about the same thing down, not to ignore it. I'll pick it up again tomorrow. For now, I will bring my attention to breathing, Bhutto, 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 some mantra like this. Whatever helps you bring your attention to one place. Focusing on the breath is the very best way of doing that. And this way, you can put that thought down for a while. But in answer to your question, if that's what it means indeed, yes, I do think. No offence taken, but everything is up for debate.
So I'm not sure what that refers to. No offence taken, but everything is up to debate. I did reply. I said, yes, everything except the truth. Be happy and stay well. So, yes, of course, everything is up to debate, up for debate, and that's very healthy. But don't let that be like verbal papancha, ruminating over something. If it's the truth, there is the Four Noble Truths. This is the basis of Buddhism. If the Buddha taught one thing, this was it. There is suffering. That is the truth. That is not up for debate. Who can say that any being does not experience any suffering? It is the very nature of existence that there is suffering. This is not up for debate. So I can confidently say that not everything is up for debate. There is an end to suffering. One could say that is up for debate, this being the other aspect of the Buddha's teaching. But the way the Buddha has put this is that there is suffering, there is a cause of suffering. Now that is not up for debate either. We know the cause can be up for debate, but the fact that there is a cause is not up for debate. If there was no cause, there would be no suffering. All things have a cause and effect. That is a natural science. That isn't religion, it's natural science. So there is suffering, there is a cause. Where one could say it's questionable and it's up for debate is where the Buddha says there is an end to suffering. But if we say ultimately we die, that particular suffering we're experiencing in this lifetime, any being experiences throughout its lifetime, knowing that life is not eternal, we are mortals and we die, that suffering particularly comes to an end. Now you may believe there is a whole eternal hell of suffering to come, or you may believe there's nothing at all, or a heaven. It doesn't matter. That suffering's ended. So to me that's unquestionable either. Also, he then said there's a path leading to the end of suffering. This practice of Sila, Samadhi, Panya, the Noble Eightfold Path. But what is not up for debate is that there is suffering, and the whole point of this teaching and the understanding of the Buddha's teachings is that we can practice something to be relieved at least of suffering and ultimately be free from suffering in this lifetime. The more we debate on the subject, the more suffering we create for ourselves. What the Buddha said is don't believe. Don't debate necessarily or discuss it too much. Try this out. Practice. Do the Noble Eightfold Path. Establish right view. Have good intentions. Practice right speech. Make your actions wholesome and good. Have a good livelihood. Put in enough effort to keep sila, keep your moral virtues, keep your precepts, and also enough effort to practice mindfulness and to throughout all of your daily activities, and spend time in samadhi, meditation. That is the Noble Eightfold Path. It's simple. Try that out and then you'll see that it really isn't up for debate. There is a cause for suffering, there is an end of suffering, and that is the path. How do you overcome leg pains for a long time sitting meditation, like 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours or more? Thanks and best wishes. Okay, there is a video on here about posture. It's about posture. If you are having leg pains, review your posture. If you're not sitting correctly, so you're cutting off the blood supply in any way in your legs, you will get numbness, you'll get pins and needles, you'll get discomfort. I'm sitting in a position here, I'm not sure how much you can see, where my legs are crossed, not in full lotus, but what we call half lotus, but no blood vessels are constricted, and this is how I would sit in meditation. In fact, I often would sit in full lotus, because that is, if the surface, the ground isn't even, then If you're in full lotus, less of your anatomy is in contact with the surface, and you have a better balance. You're like a weeble wobble. You can't fall over. You're in a very stable way. If you fall asleep, you can stay like that. You'll nod like this, but you won't necessarily. You'll slump, but you will not fall over. Try and establish this posture. Firstly, I won't try and demonstrate now because I'm not sure you can even see. Watch that video. We establish this posture in stages. Firstly, with our legs just in what's called the Burmese position, and then we lift this from the floor, this right calf onto the left thigh. It's that way round because the Buddha said so, but it's also, and I'm not going to go into it, it does have some physiological reasons why it's that way round. So don't try and say, oh well, I'm left-handed, right-handed, I should do it the other way. There is a whole reasons behind why you put your right foot on your left thigh and not the other way round. You'll never see a Buddha Rupa the other way round. That's a statue of the Buddha. And you won't ever see any meditators, serious meditators, with their feet crossed the other way round. That's a whole other story. But if you can't sit like that, it doesn't matter. Just sit in a chair. If you want to meditate for 1, 2, 3 hours, that's the most important thing. Sit in a chair. The thing to try and avoid is moving during that period. So establish a posture that's comfortable for you in the first instance, but perhaps establish a posture that is progressive, so that you ultimately will be able to sit. If you're young, if you're not my age, I was in my 40s when I first began meditation, and I'd never sat on the floor except at school, when I found it probably uncomfortable even then, when I was a child at school. You're very young, little school, not bigger school where you sit on chairs. So coming from a Western background, I'd never sat on the floor cross-legged. So I had to go from sitting in comfortable sofas or very comfortable office chairs, all ergonomically designed for your body so you didn't get repetitive strain injury on your keyboard or your laptop or whatever, all of this, to a concrete floor in the jungle with mosquitoes and not even much of a mat. This sitting cloth they don't really bother so much with in Thailand. You might have some rush matting if you're lucky, but generally just on the concrete floor. As I'm sitting now on this marble tile, this ceramic tiled floor with just this thin cloth, no discomfort at all. But that's because now 15 years I've been meditating, more than that, 15, 16, 17 years I've been meditating. But at first my knees wouldn't touch the floor. In a very quick time I had to learn, and I did push myself. I was a bit kind of macho about it. I saw it as a challenge, had to do it, but don't do that. You can cause yourself injuries. Just do it gradually. If your knees are up by your ears to begin with, it doesn't matter. They will generally go down as your pelvis relaxes. So pick a posture that's progressive. Wear comfortable clothing. I've seen so many people come to me whilst I was in India. They came to visit and they tried to sit meditate, and I say, well, why are you sitting like that? Oh, my trousers are too tight. Well, why? Why are you wearing tight jeans when you want to sit and meditate? Especially if you're a little bit weighty down below. Wear loose fitting clothing. I'm wearing a skirt. I don't expect all people to walk around in skirts. It would be a bit frowned upon perhaps in some places, but you can wear loose fitting trousers. Undo the button at your waist. Nobody can see if you've got a top on, and sit so that nothing material wise is cutting off the blood supply. Think logically. It's not about what you look like, it's about practicality. And if you are wanting to sit for this length of time, then you need to be sitting in the correct posture to begin with. As soon as you move, you're starting again. So it doesn't matter if you sit for 3 hours. If every 20 minutes you move your legs, you're only sitting for 20 minutes in succession, another 20 minutes, another 20 minutes. You can, of course, and it's recommended, every so often you'll break in your sitting meditation, get up and practice walking meditation. Often I don't. I mean, I sit for 3 hours in sessions because I'm walking most of the day anyway, and I don't practice walking meditation when I'm, like in this circumstance, always walking all day long. I think I've walked about, I've no idea, probably 20 kilometres today, and I didn't even have to go anywhere. But just wandering and speaking to people as they've come up to me, the day's gone by. So there's been a lot of walking and exploring and getting to know the country and the culture and the area. But that's not my usual practice. If I'm sitting for 3 hours, I sit like exactly as I'm sitting now, or in full lotus, and as long as your back is upright and you're balanced with your ears in line with your shoulders, shoulders in line with your elbows, elbows in line with your hips, and your knees are on the floor, your bottom is on the floor, you cannot be in a better position. This is the way the Buddha suggested that we sit. Aim towards that, but if you need to bring your legs in slowly to get to that, then do it slowly. Each time move them in a little further. And one day you'll put your right leg on your left thigh and maybe only be able to sit for a little while. But be kind to yourself. Do not do yourself any injuries. That's the main thing. Wear sensible clothing. If you need to move, move. Because you're not going to be developing samadhi if you're in a lot of pain. Or if it's just discomfort, a little discomfort, then focus on the discomfort until it goes away. Oh, I'm sick of humanity. Maybe becoming a monk would be a cure. Well, sadly, no. I mean, humanity, if you're sick of it, this is ill will, this is aversion, this is disliking, this is not wanting your experience of what you see humanity as. On the whole, humanity, in fact, all living beings are wanting the same thing, happiness, and they are offering kindness. There is, if you are doom scrolling as they call it apparently, I heard a monk say this thing, on the internet, looking at all what's going on in the world, all of the horror which we can see very visually, I'm sure, these days. Yes, it's not going to make you feel very happy or pleased with what's going on in humanity, but this has always been going on in humanity. We just weren't so aware of it as we are now. Look around you at what's going on in your immediate vicinity. Most people generally are quite nice, aren't they? Generally quite kind. Your family, the people your friends, that they are also humanity. Are you sick of those? Look, concentrate on the good in people rather than the bad. One of the Dhammapada sayings, I can't say it correctly, but it's hate is never resolved through hate. It's only resolved through loving kindness. I phrased that awfully incorrectly, but you get the point. Hate will not get rid of hate. Only kindness or love will get rid of hate. We develop metta, loving kindness, within ourselves, and this will get rid of that feeling of aversion. And then we develop compassion. So not I'm sick of humanity, have compassion for those in humanity, or in fact all beings who may be suffering. Becoming a monk will help you to do that, and you'll be curing yourself. That is the way it works. We cure ourselves in order to set the example for others to cure themselves. We cannot cure anyone, either of physical ailments, mental conditions, or problematical behaviour in their very nature. So we can, though, cure ourselves and set an example for others to follow. And this is the practice. This is what we do. Is it normal to experience unusual silence during meditation? I've tried meditation, and everything went unusually silent, more silent than normal. It can be. There is nothing normal or usual about meditation. During our meditation, we will experience all kinds of phenomena of varying different kinds, whether it's physical feelings or mental emotions, or even mental visualizations or even sounds that aren't auditorial, but is there a word like visualizations for sound? I don't know, imagined, let's say. There is all kinds of phenomena that will arise, and it will stay a while, it will go away. This is what we note, this is what we bring our awareness to. The arising or the apparent absence of silence, of sound, unusually quiet. This is where perhaps your attention is going inside and not paying attention to what is being heard through the auditory reception of sound with the ears, and it will last for a little while, or it may, the sound may come back very quickly. Whatever the phenomena, be aware of it, but bring your attention back to the meditation object, and don't be distracted, whether it's by a sound. Say for the sound of silence, you may hear in silent conditions a sound still, a pitch, a noise. You may hear your bodily sounds, or you may hear silence, so an absence of sound. Don't let an absence of sound or an absence of seeing distract you, because that can be as much of a distraction as a sound or actual seeing, actual light coming in. But let it bring your attention back to the present moment in time, which is when it is happening, coming straight back to bringing your attention to breathing, the breath, and therefore bringing your mindfulness back to where you're keeping it for the time that you are meditating. So all kinds of phenomena arise. There is nothing normal, nothing usual. We are all different, and our experiences are different. Ultimately, the stages we are aiming for also will vary. People will go from one to another or not. They're just guidelines. So nothing is to be expected, other than ultimately some tranquility, some calmness, and the ability to ultimately develop equanimity towards everything that does arise and you do experience throughout this practice, both throughout meditation, sitting, and your daily activities in life. How many have I got? Oh, quite a few still. There is nothing wrong with the use of money. Olden days people used to offer food, but now people offer money because it is convenient to carry. Yes, absolutely, as a layperson. But as a monk, we don't use money. And it's quite okay for you to offer money to monks via the means of acceptable, but you can't put money in my hand. So you can offer donations like through those links on this channel, or to monasteries when you go and put the money in the box. And then a layperson like this Upasaka that is helping me now, I don't know whether you can hear that, some pipey music. It's probably a tuk-tuk. They do play some funny music, the tuk-tuks here sometimes. What was I talking about? Money, yes. And then a layperson has to use the money. But we as monks, we take the 10th precept is we don't use money. So it isn't okay for Buddhist monks to use money. Now one of the reasons for this is that we've renounced everything. But it's still so we're including money. But one of the reasons is to continue our dependence on lay people. There's this interdependence of monks and nuns, lay men and lay women. This is the fourfold assembly. And it's very important to maintain that, keep that established. This is why there are still the Buddhist religion today, millennia later. If monks had gone off just after the Buddha died, and with his teachings, to a cave alone and meditated into Nibbana with some food and some stores, enough to do that, there would be no Buddhism now, because all the monks would have died long ago. But he made these rules that we depend each day on food. We can't store food overnight, we can't cook our own food, and we can't even buy our own food using money. We need lay people to do that for us. So where there's a way of keeping us in contact with lay people, they get to see us, experience what we're doing, and learn from our example, and we get to have their present company and then be able to practice generosity to us. So you can't give money to me. You can make donations, but then I'll have to think of a name. We'll call him Prabu for now. Prabu, my upasaka. He has got a name, but I wouldn't want to give you his real name. It's not fair because he doesn't know I'm talking about him. But let's call him Prabu. Prabu can, however it works, we go to the ATM or something and get some money out and buy something like this. We haven't had to do that yet because everything for monks here is free. Not free, it's offered generously. So even the bus conductor, the bus driver, you don't have to pay on the bus. He just says that's fine. So you know that this is the way. So you don't need money in a Buddhist country. Outside of a Buddhist country it's different, and you have to find little ways around it and tricks. But incidentals, like I have some coffee now. Prabu was able to go to the shop with me. He went to the ATM to get some, what do you call it? It's still the same, like rupees, but Sinhalese money. And I asked him, it's not a great deal, but to keep hold of this for me as my sponsor, if you like, so that he can go to that shop and buy me some coffee or anything like that was necessary. So this is the difference between Buddhism and other religions. We do have some unique features, but they're very important, and they are what make it not only unique from other religions, but the only religion that hasn't changed for 2,566 years. All other religions have changed so dramatically over those millennia in their appearance and their behaviours and their names and their practices. The core teachings are often based on the same thing, ancient texts, but the way they live has changed dramatically as society has changed. But if you see Buddhist monks, you'll see that, and the Bodhisattvas, the religion, hasn't changed, especially when you come to a country like Sri Lanka here, where it's the oldest established Buddhist country in the world, having become Buddhist just a few hundred years after the Buddha himself died. So there we are, no money for us monks. In Hindu, a monk don't eat onions and garlic. We've covered that, haven't we? There's someone else talking about onions and garlic. Right, one more question. And this person calls me Prabu. Well, that's just a coincidence, that, because I wasn't thinking of Prabu in this context. Prabu is a Sanskrit word meaning a devotee of Krishna or Rama, a Hindu god. Or I think it's a respectful term from a Hindu to a religious person. It's a kind of a devotional term, but it's also a name, a common name in India. And it was the name, if you've heard of Shantaram, or Lin, as he's known in the novel, the most commonly read student gap year backpackers book in any backpackers lodge throughout Asia, or probably the world, is this book called Shantaram, of a man who went to India on the run from Australia. A wonderful, wonderful novel, book, semi-novel biography. And his first tuk-tuk driver, like in this situation, was called Prabu, which is where I got the name from. So this chap amusingly is calling me Prabu. Thank you for that, Doug. I'll say your name, because I'm not sure it is, but that's the username. You're saying thank you for your instruction, we are welcome. Do all Buddhists become Bodhisattvas? Oh, that's a long answer. Or is it our destination to take birth again in samsara? So there's two questions that are conflicting there. All Buddhists won't become bodhisattvas. In the Mahayana, the northern tradition, it is a Buddhist practitioner's aim to become a bodhisattva. That is, in their understanding, I think, and I don't know, I'm not a northern tradition Mahayana Buddhist, they want to be ready to become the next Buddha. And until then, they want to help all mankind. In the southern tradition, the Theravada tradition, we want to become free from suffering in this lifetime and attain to enlightenment, nibbana, ourselves, and set an example for everyone else to follow and do the same. That's the difference. So we expect, as in the southern tradition, as Theravada Buddhists, to be free from samsara, free from rebirth, by attaining to freedom from suffering in this lifetime and attaining to nibbana, whereas in the northern tradition they want to stay in samsara, being reborn over and over again, in order to continue their very noble and good efforts in saving all beings and allowing them also to become bodhisattvas. So there's a bit of a differentiation of understanding in the two different questions there, so it may not have translated quite well. I may have misunderstood it or not read it correctly, but I hope that explains it. So my aim is not to become a bodhisattva. In the Theravada tradition, the bodhisattva was the Buddha, because it is only a bodhisattva is the preliminary stage to becoming a Buddha. So the bodhisattva becomes the Buddha, but we only have one Buddha, and then we have eons and eons before there's another Buddha. So for all the bodhisattvas that there may be, or aspiring bodhisattvas, let's say, that there may be, only one's going to get that opportunity, and that's going to be eons and eons away yet. In the Theravada tradition, we're a little bit more realistic, let's say, in the expectations of, let's understand this practice, let's become free from suffering ourselves, and we won't be then experiencing rebirth into samsara. So I hope that's answered your question. I apologise if I misunderstood it slightly. If there's anything useful I've said today, I hope you can please use that. I've used the word hope twice there. There's a whole video I've done a while back in Thailand about how hope is not really what we're looking for, but that's another thing. If there's something useful, please use it. If not, just let it go. Don't let it bother you. Thank you for watching. Tomorrow, or in the next few days at least, the next videos, I think you'll find hopefully the background will become a little bit more interesting when I move into the jungle. And I'm now getting used to my environment, back into my routine, so I'll be able to start making these recordings at the usual time when there is some daylight, sunlight, and you can see the surroundings around me. Thank you for watching.